Yeah, we don't want the casino down here. Are you going to have this
that.
right up against a residential neighborhood like this? This would be better served in an industrial area. Not only that, you're taking up valuable waterfront, which could be served by the longshoremen. Ships don't go up Broad Street. They don't go up 95. They gotta have river access.
I'm against the casino, and the reasons why are for congestion, for the kind of people it might bring around here. I understand that it can help the city financially, but I don't think it should be around neighborhoods.
I think that they belong, that it's okay if they come to Philadelphia, but not to a neighborhood. And there'll be too much traffic.
It's our neighborhood too. Most of us that work on the waterfront live in those neighborhoods. I live 10 blocks away from the proposed Foxwood sites. It brings the criminal element, it brings the prostitution, it brings, they're projecting 18,000 more cars just through my neighborhood. Then you have to worry about the drunk driving.
Walk around the streets, you see signs in the window. People are very mad about it because they feel that the politicians snuck it in without anybody knowing about it.
The city and state have been debating the casinos for several years now, and the state passed legislation a couple of years ago, and the basic idea was that we set up this gaming commission that was going to choose where the casinos were going to be and who was going to get to manage them. And finally they chose two sites. One of the sites is on North Columbus Boulevard, and the other one's on South Columbus Boulevard, and both are controversial.
I think that Philadelphians should be the ones that make a decision that's going to be this important to the future of our city, and what I'm finding on the street is that people agree with that. All across the city, people overwhelmingly supported the idea of having a say.
I think people in this city have been so defeated and beat down by bad development and by being told that there's nothing possible and that the fix is in over and over again, that Philadelphians aren't used to winning on real issues. The first thing we did to everyone was we had to convince them that you can win and that this isn't a done deal, that actually citizens do have power, even in a process as corrupt and as broken as this one is.
The opponents of the decision to site the two casinos along the river joined together to push a referendum that would ban casinos from any area that's close to homes or churches. In essence, the result of the referendum would be that there would be a very small number of places in the city where you could have a casino. And the idea among some of the proponents was just to get rid of casinos in general, but even among people who didn't want to get rid of casinos in general, they at least wanted to have control over where they went.
What we figured out was that in order for us to put this piece of legislation before City Council, it would require 20,000 signatures in 20 days. It's about 1,000 signatures a day, which is a tremendous challenge. I've never had a petition that was so easy to get people to sign, because the concept made so much sense to people. I would go up to people and I'd ask, has anyone asked you what you think about casinos? I said, no. I said, well, do you think that you have a right to vote on whether or not casinos should, for example, be right next to schools, churches, synagogues, places of worship, or people's homes? I said, yeah. I said, well, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to put a ballot question on to support this referendum, and then I'd explain it.
We need jobs. We need jobs. Money University.
Every man down here stood to fight for the dredging to come to Philadelphia. We supported
and
you
it didn't get done yet.
Every single
it
one
ain't
of
done
us
yet.
in here,
It ain't
we
done
stood
yet.
right here on your docks. We stood right on your docks and support you guys to get the dredging.
We're everybody against each other, and they're all making money. Never have enough. Union men, we're all union men here. Forget that. Fight for one another. We should fight for one another, not against each other.
I'm asking for silence so we can start our meeting. Thank you.
The idea of the home rule charter is that there's some things that the city of Philadelphia should control themselves. The state gives the city the power to do that, and then the city has to actually enforce it. State versus local control is a big conflict, has been a big conflict in a lot of areas for a long time. And the city of Philadelphia has had lots of conflicts with the state over many issues. The state has set the rules with regard to land use. But in general, the state has told the local governments, like the city of Philadelphia, that they have control over land use in general. So, in fact, when most land use decisions are made, they're made by the city. But when the gaming legislation was passed, the state took back control over land use decisions from the city. And many people are upset about that because they think that the decisions will have a big impact on the cities.
I would ask the chief clerk to please read the title of resolution number 070113.
A resolution submitting to the electors of the city on an election date to be designated by ordinance an amendment to the Philadelphia Home Rule Charter relating to the location of licensed gambling facilities within the city as proposed by petition filed with council.
Thank you. The chair recognizes Councilwoman Blackwell.
Thank you, Madam President. My question to the bill sponsor is there any way we could work out these issues? Or do we have to proceed today? Or is there something we can do to all move forward so there are not so many conflicts and that everyone could be on the same page?
And I understand the issues on both sides. I've been pro-development. I supported the Comcast building. I supported stadiums, as all of us did. I support convention center expansion. But I think it's time that someone stands up for the folks in this city and says to our state lawmakers, who basically silenced us, all of us, including me and the other 16 members of this body, by enacting a bill at 2 o'clock in the morning on July 4th, 04, without giving any of us in the city of Philadelphia, not a single person in the city of Philadelphia, but for the state lawmakers, an opportunity to speak on this issue. We were denied. We were denied the opportunity to be part of a process, whether you're for casinos or against casinos. Everyone in this room who is a Philadelphia resident, who is a voter in this city, and those who are listening to us today, and many other folks who have been engaged in this discussion, will at least have the opportunity to be heard on May 15th. It may be voted up, it may be voted down. We are the last line of defense. We shouldn't take the position to silence the people who put us in office as our state lawmakers did in 2006.
Again, I will repeat, since resolution number 070113 is a charter change to the Home Rule Charter, it requires a 2/3 vote majority. At this time, I would ask the chief clerk to please call the roll.
Councilwoman Blackwell, Councilwoman Camel, Councilman Clark, Councilman DeChico, Councilman Good, Councilman Greenlee, Councilman Kelly, Councilman Kenny, Councilwoman Gajewski, Councilwoman Miller, Councilman O'Neill, Councilman Ramos, Councilwoman
The ayes are 17.
It was democracy, and the people are going to have a chance to be heard, and they're going to have a say in what they want their future, how they want the future to be, whether they want it in the casinos or whatever. Okay, we're going to have a chance to vote on this.
And I think this is a wonderful example of democracy in action, that the people who live in the neighborhoods have been able to prevail on our elected representatives to do what's right.
Here's what we want to get to people. We want them to please vote May 15th, Tuesday, May 15th, to keep casinos away from schools, homes, places of worship, parks, and playgrounds.
The next stage in this effort in the next 2 months is really to make this a truly citywide movement.
There's many people who don't know that a fight is going on. And so we're telling them there's a fight, it's a real fight, and it's a winnable fight. And we don't want them anywhere, so no one thinks that we're just trying to push them out of our neighborhood and into someone else's.
And we need a huge, huge voter turnout in order to show our power.
So soon after we were able to get this thing on the ballot, it was moved to be the first ballot question, which is the first time they've moved in 25 years a ballot question. And they moved it because this is, I think it's fair to say, this is the most controversial and also the most citizen-initiated and supported referendum in 30 years. And as a result of that, they moved it to be ballot question number 1. And the framing of the question, though it's worded in a bit of sort of the legalese of it, is essentially saying, should we place restrictions on casinos so that no casino is built within 1,500 feet of a school, place of worship, or home? And so we're encouraging people on May 15th to vote yes on ballot question number 1, which would effectively move casinos out of Philadelphia neighborhoods.
Now the Pennsylvania Gaming Control Board has weighed in by filing suit last week to block the voter referendum. It alleges that the referendum is an effort to prevent the construction of any casinos in the city. It also said that the board was given legal authority to choose the casinos under the state gaming law.
The things that are being litigated are pretty complicated because the law has evolved over a century about the relationship between the state and local government with regard to land use. So there are a lot of cases, and they're somewhat inconsistent. So in terms of the people who are litigating the case and the judges who are going to have to decide, who have had to decide it, it is complicated. The policy issue is really pretty simple. Who should get to decide? Should the city get to decide what land use decisions it's going to make, or should the state get to decide? Again, in general, the city gets to decide these kind of questions. The state has decided it was too important, gaming was too important to leave those decisions to the city. But you know, it's a relatively simple question. Do you think the state should be in charge of these land use decisions, or do you think the city should be in charge? That's not a complicated question, really.
And the Pennsylvania Gaming Control Board is still asserting that it has sole authority and is able effectively to trump city zoning control. And we're saying that actually that's not true, that based on the Page decision and also based on the political decision that's been made, it's very clear that the city retains city zoning control.
No matter what the Supreme Court says, no matter what, if the referendum is on the ballot, even if it does pass, there is going to be continued struggle over the casinos in the city of Philadelphia. It's not going to resolve the issue. There are people in the city who are going to keep on fighting no matter what happens with the referendum, and the city does have other ways of making it difficult to build the casinos. The state and the Gaming Commission have also vowed to keep on fighting in order to build the casinos, and as I've said before, the state does have more power than the city, so in the end it's likely that something will get built, but it doesn't mean whatever happens 2 weeks from now doesn't necessarily determine what's going to happen in the future.
I've really thought of this as an issue, not just about a right to have a say in how we develop our city largely, but also just how citizens in general are often deprived of that right, not just on issues of casinos, but on issues that impact neighborhoods across the city, you know, issues of housing development, commercial development. So for us, the issue of how we plan the city is intertwined so closely with the casinos.
We want the development, we want the tax base. There needs to be more transparency and openness in a planning process to figure out what the public wants.
I mean, I've written multiple letters to some of our representatives and things like that, just saying, look, I mean, let the people have a voice in this whole process, right?
This was coming. This was coming. It goes all the way back to Rendell. You can see all those little steps it took, and then all of a sudden, then they spring it on you. They're just surprised that everybody around here finally had enough.